Faithful listeners, welcome back to another episode of the Keystone Chronicles podcast. With us this week, Eric Ganster comes through to talk about trail cameras. And if that doesn't excite you guys, I'll be really surprised. So Eric runs a badass page on Instagram called Trailcamology. He's got some of the coolest pictures I think that you can run across being taken from trail cameras on the social media, at least as far as I see. Eric's from down around the southwestern part of our state, and he's been running cameras for a long time, guys. So in the episode, I try to pick his brain a little bit on talking about a lot of different camera companies and some different camera companies that you should look at, and maybe some stuff that's flying under the radar that you've never heard of. And you might be able to get a good deal on that stuff, or that stuff is just amazing and it's been out for a long time and no one really knows about it. Or maybe it's a mainstream camera that he really supports or talks highly of. We also talk about setting them up, the way they kind of work, and just a great conversation going into a very knowledgeable guy. So I hope you guys really enjoy this. I really highly suggest that you go and check out his page over on YouTube, also the Trailcamology, and the Instagram. I'm telling you guys, he's got some really nice stuff on there. And as far as this guy's knowledge, don't be afraid to reach out and ask him any questions you have, like, hey, should I buy this camera? Hey, have you tried this camera? What's your reviews? You know, he is not obligated to anybody, and that makes a big difference, you know, whenever you're looking for critique for something or a review on something. So I really hope you guys enjoy this one as much as I did. Here we go. God bless. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Keystone Chronicles podcast. With us today, we're joined by Eric Ganster of Southwest Pennsylvania. Eric, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing real good.
Man,
how you doing tonight?
I'm super good. I'm so excited for our conversation here. I know we were talking a little bit before we come on, and we were talking about trying to keep it a little trail cam talk, and then of course I'm sure we're just with the passion of whitetail hunters that we are, that we'll definitely get into that a little bit. So Eric, just let us know who you are, man, where you're from, and kind of what you got going on.
Yeah, I live in Southwest Pennsylvania. I work a full-time job in manufacturing, and my side hobby is trail cameras. I've been doing it since they first came out way back when you used to have to put a roll of film and 6 or 8 D batteries in a camera, and then you'd go to the drugstore or wherever and develop them every few days. And
the 1 hour development.
yeah, exactly. And spend a fortune for 1,000 pictures of squirrels and birds, and maybe if you were lucky, get one good buck or something. But so yeah, that was my start. And I grew up in the country. Mm-hmm. I've always had a passion for wildlife and whitetails and hunting, and so taking pictures of them was just a natural progression for me. Yeah. And then when the trail camera phenomenon came on, that's when I got into it, and and that progressed into the digital cameras, and to the point now where I'm a self-proclaimed addict. At any given time, I probably have 75 to 100 cameras out in the field. A few different states, primarily right now, West Virginia and Pennsylvania. A few different counties in Pennsylvania. I've got cameras in Washington, Greene, Allegheny, Forest, and Warren counties currently.
Yeah, man, you got cameras all over the place.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the history of the trail camera, and I just want to go into a quick story because I know you'll appreciate it. So I remember my dad bought probably one of the first, like you said, trail cameras, and I can remember we would always do that. When you'd pull the film, we would run to Rite Aid, and we'd sit in his van with them for an hour, and we'd wait for it to get developed because you're so excited, and at that time
it was like a hunt in itself. It was like same excitement you get from hunting.
Yeah, and I remember, what did you get? Like 30 pictures out of that?
Yeah.
It was not a lot.
If you were lucky.
Yeah.
And if you were lucky, you got a week out of D batteries, very expensive D batteries.
Oh man, I remember the old days, and I also remember, it's kind of off subject, but my dad had like one of the first Fox Pro game calls.
Okay.
It was like the first of its kind. I remember him buying it, and even then, I think as many years ago as that was, and I know that there is somebody that works for them that listens to this. Um, it was the first one they made. It was green. You know, it looked like just like a 9-volt flashlight. No, nothing fancy, and
Hmm.
it had 8 to 12 calls. I can't remember what it was, but I think then it was like $350. And luckily my mom doesn't listen to this podcast because if she did, as many years ago as that was, like she would probably slap him.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, back to the trail cam talk. Yeah, it was really wild, man. And I'd like for you to touch on that. Like, how did you see the trail cam market kind of? I don't want to say market, but the boom. Like, how did you see it kind of happen, and what do you think went on with that?
It blew up with the introduction of digital to where you could download pictures to your phone, to your computer.
Hmm.
You know, it blew up at that point, and then hunters started get. I mean, it's a fantastic tool for hunters. Obviously,
Hmm.
um, it's a very less intrusive way to keep an eye on what's going on the property that you hunt. So, especially if you're a big buck hunter, you know how finicky they can be, and how a little bit of human scent in the wrong place can push them completely out of the area.
Hmm.
So trail cameras have allowed us to keep an eye on those particular animals and deer without stepping foot on the property nearly as much. I mean, you
Yeah.
still got to go in, you still got to check them, you still got to change batteries now and then. But the progression over the past 10, 12 years has just been amazing. The quality of the cameras now, the quality of the pictures, quality of the videos, the cellular camera revolution, I call it is just blown up. And the cost of cameras has really become, it's allowed a lot more people to get into it. Back when the digitals first started coming in, they were pretty cost prohibitive. They were very expensive units. They got horrible battery life. Picture quality was, you might be able to tell it was a buck.
Hmm.
You may be able to count points, but they weren't what I call postcard quality shots by any means.
Right. I think that I'm going to have to dig through some old pictures that I have. Either they here at my house or they're still at mom and dad's, and I'm going to have to post a picture from one of them old cameras just because it's been so long since I looked at one of them old photos. But
Yeah,
that would be pretty cool, kind of like a little blast from the past there.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I can kind of remember that flipping over to what it is. I don't want to say what it is today, but what when it did flip over and how the camera game changed. And it seems like the prices though, like the price point hasn't changed too much from what it was. I remember them being like, I mean, obviously you have your much better cameras and they're a little more expensive, but that
Mhm.
$50 to $100 price point I feel like has been that way for a long time.
There's
Um,
always been a few cameras in that niche, but now you can get a much higher quality for $100, or
mhm,
even some of the what I call off-brand cameras that are coming direct from China,
mhm,
are pretty impressive for the price point that they're offered at.
mhm.
Yeah, it used to be if you wanted a good quality picture, back in the day, Cuddyback was king.
Yeah.
Cuddyback put out some fantastic cameras, but they came with a pretty hefty price tag back then.
Yes, I remember
Uh,
those days. Yeah, I remember their big claim to fame was their trigger speed.
yes, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
they did. They put out a great camera, and they still do. They still put out a good camera, but there's a lot more competition.
Oh my
It
goodness.
seems like back then you had two or three players in the game. Now, gosh, there's got to be a dozen, maybe even more. Probably more, 15 or 20 different quality manufacturers out there.
Yeah, yeah, I agree totally with you. And that's another thing that we're gonna get into here. You've hung countless and a pile of different cameras, and like that's why one of the reasons I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. So, can you walk me through setting up a camera? For you yourself when you go out to set them up. Now,
When I go out,
yeah,
yeah,
I know. I mean, there's it's a really loaded question because,
mhm.
you know, I guess what is the first thing do you look for? Do you try to put your cameras on scrapes? If you do put them on scrapes, do you hang them high? Do you hang them low? Do you hide them in the weeds? I mean, there's just so many things to get into here. So just
Right.
try to steer our conversation a little bit here for that question.
Sure. Yeah. What I do, first and foremost, I run cameras 24/7, 365. So I'm out there. I try to capture unique shots. I try to capture unique backgrounds and try to make a, again, like I call it, postcard quality shot. Like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that would be a sunrise or a sunset in the background and that kind of thing. So I don't necessarily target any one species. And I laugh. I call deer are boring for trail cameras,
Yeah.
for a true camera junkie like myself and
Uh-huh.
several others. For 8 months out of the year, deer are boring.
Mm-hmm.
They get exciting. This time of year is when I get excited to start getting deer on camera. So at this time of year, I will take out and mostly food sources. Early summer, midsummer, late summer,
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at food sources. As the season draws nearer and hunting seasons start coming around, I start moving those cameras into staging areas.
Mm-hmm.
I typically, and I get a lot of disagreement with this, and a lot, there's a lot of variables if you're on public land or private land. If you're on public land, hide your cameras high or hang your cameras high, hide them,
Right.
disguise them. I've gone to the point where I've glued sticks and leaves to the body of the camera just to try to keep them out of people's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if somebody finds a camera and they want it, they're going to steal it
Right.
if they want it. I try to keep it out of the line of sight as much as possible. So I don't do a lot of public land camera work anymore. I've had a lot of bad experiences over the years. I've probably had 40 to 50 cameras stolen over the past 15 years, and almost 90% of those have been public land.
Wow.
And I've also had to where people, if they don't steal them, they shoot them. I've had them shot off of trees with shotguns for whatever reason.
What the heck?
Maybe I'm in an area that they don't want me hunting, or maybe it's just kids out there just being kids. I don't know. So that said, a lot of my stuff now is private land, which I've been fortunate enough to acquire and be able to hang cameras and hunt on. If I'm on public land or private land, I'm sorry, I like to hang my cameras low, and that's just a personal preference to me. A lot of my sets are 18 to 24 inches off the ground, whether that be on a tree or on some sort of a mount out in the field or a food plot. But I like to hang the cameras low and I angle them slightly up. It just gives me I think it gives a better quality picture, and it gives a little better perspective, and it allows you to capture that background. Again, like I said, I'm trying to create good quality shots.
Yep.
The average deer hunter and probably, the majority of people out there using cameras, they don't care about the background. They want to be able to count points. They want to be able to count, to see what kind of quality deer are in their area. Myself, I try to go the extra mile and put out a good quality pic. So that said, I hang a lot of stuff low, slightly angled up. I try to avoid trees, grass, anything that's going to cause false triggers. And if I'm hanging a camera in an area like that, I have a pair of clippers that I carry with me, and I'll try to trim as much as possible, just to cut down. You're always going to have false triggers. It's just part of the game. But I try to cut down on as much of that as possible.
Now,
but yeah, this time, and as we go into fall, I'll start looking at transition areas. I love scrapes when scrapes start showing up. I love putting cameras on scrapes, especially in video mode. You can capture some really, really cool stuff there. And you'd be surprised if you haven't tried it, how many deer will actually visit that scrape, both bucks and does. And then, as hunting seasons come in, I may move them once or twice more. But typically, once hunting seasons come, I leave the cameras alone. I try to stay out of the area as much as possible.
Yeah, you don't want to get much scent or anything in there. So, do you let your cameras soak year round then?
I'll leave them out year round. Unless there's an issue with them. If there's something's not working correctly, or if they're eating batteries like they shouldn't, then I'll bring them in and either junk them or do a little bit of repair on them. Figure out what's going on. But yeah, most everything I have has been out year round. We talked a little bit earlier about the Exodus brand. I have a couple Exodus cameras that literally have been in the field for 5-6 years now. Have never came in.
Wow.
Yeah, I change batteries once in a while, swap the cards out here and there, and they've stayed. They've gotten to the point where some of them, the straps have actually started growing into the tree, or the
Mm-hmm.
tree has started growing into the straps because they've
Dang.
been there so long.
Wow. And they all still work?
They do. They do.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
that speaks pretty good volumes.
Yeah, that's a testament to those guys. They put out a good quality camera.
Now, when you said you're getting an angle, right? How do
Hmm.
you normally set it? Do you use the stock straps? Do you use paracord? Do you use twine or
Again,
wire?
private land. I use straps a lot of times,
Hmm.
and I laugh. I should have patented it years ago. I have a little meme that I created called the stick. I think everybody that puts enough cameras out, everybody uses a stick to get that angle, whether it's the bottom of the camera, the top of the camera.
Hmm.
But I jam that stick in there and just get the angle. And I try to set what do I want to call it? Like looking down a trail or looking where I expect the deer. Instead of being at a 90-degree angle, I
Uh-huh.
try to get it to where that camera is triggering as the animal enters
Okay.
where I expect it to come from. So instead of setting, on a field edge, for example, I don't just stick it on a tree and at a 90-degree angle to where you know what I'm saying? Like I
Hmm.
try to stick it down from where I expect that deer to approach or where I expect that turkey to approach or whatever animal it may be.
Right. And how many of your cameras do you run in video compared to picture mode?
I do. It's probably 50-50. I do a lot of video.
Okay. Now, do
Yeah.
you run like I know a lot of cameras have a hybrid mode where they'll,
Hmm.
take some pictures and take some videos. Do you use that at all?
I do. I do. It depends on the brand. One of my pet peeves with them is some of the cameras will take 3 pictures or whatever picture burst before they take a video. So a lot of, in those particular cases, I don't use hybrid mode because you'll get to 3 pictures
Hmm.
and then the video is nothing but the ass end of a deer walking away. I much prefer the ones that take the video first and then maybe snap a picture or two after.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I do use that quite a bit.
Yeah, I have yeah, I would say I'm right there in a boat with you. I have mixed emotions or feelings about that setting. I turn that on when I'm feeling froggy, if you will.
Yeah, yeah.
So you put the camera at your approach, where you think the deer may be coming down the trail. Now, what if that is facing a certain way? Do you take in any consideration the way that your camera's facing? Is it facing south? Is it facing north? Is it facing
No,
east or west?
no, I don't, and I know a lot of people do, and I'm not saying they're right or wrong or
Hmm.
I'm right or wrong. I I purposely will face cameras into the sunrise or into the sunset.
I see.
And I know I'm going to get a lot of washout first thing in the morning, last thing in the evening when the sun. I know I'm going to have pictures that are useless because they're washed out, but I also get a lot of pictures that are phenomenal
Hmm.
as the sun is rising and as the sun's setting. So to me, it's a trade-off. Um, and again, a lot of what I do is for pick quality.
Right.
For the typical hunter that just wants to see what's going on, yes, I would say avoid east and west.
Hmm.
Try to get your cameras. Again, if you're out chasing a big deer and you really want to put your cameras high, get them up out of the line of sight, and avoid facing east and west, and you're gonna be less intrusive to a big deer. Something that's more. Now, I say that, and I'm very fortunate that I've got a couple hundred acres down here that I'm fortunate to take care of and hunt. Uh, I think my deer know me, and I know a lot of people will probably laugh at
Hmm.
that, but I really think my deer. I'm out there so much,
Hmm.
usually 3 or 4 times, and I've seen the same deer year after year after year, and I've seen the same bucks. I've been able to watch bucks grow from yearlings into 5 and 6 year olds. That I honestly think my deer know me. They know my patterns. They know my scent. So I don't pay a whole lot of attention to where my cameras are out there or what height they are. I still try to practice good scent control because a big buck is a big buck. If you spook them, they're going to be gone. So, but I don't pay as much attention as a lot of guys. Like if I tell somebody from Iowa or Ohio that's hunting public land, they're going to say you're crazy. You have no idea what you're talking about. You can't
Hmm.
do that kind of thing. But um, it's just personal preference on my part back here that I don't think it bothers them nearly as much.
Right. Yeah, I would say you're right though. unless you have multiple different people tracking in and out on a tract of land,
Right.
I don't think that the deer are entirely too pressured. I am fortunate enough to hunt it's not what it was, but a public land area where there was a road that wasn't the greatest.
Hmm.
And while it was like that, it was great hunting. I mean, absolutely good, really good. And the road was kind of fixed up a little bit compared to what it
Yeah.
was. And since then, it has been not as good.
Right.
And it is most definitely from the travel and before there just wasn't. I mean, there was no footprints in there.
Hmm.
Now there's
Hmm.
a couple in there, and so I think that it's just any tract of land. If there's just the same scent too, I don't think that
Right.
that really affects the deer too much.
Well, and then those deer live there 24/7.
Right.
They know that's their bedroom. They
That's
know
right.
exactly what happens at every given moment. So
Yep. Yeah.
I find it funny. I do a lot. I have a four-wheeler and I take a side by side out.
Mhm.
And I found checking cameras. If I ride around on my four-wheeler, I can ride right up on deer, and they
Mhm.
they won't run. They'll stand there. They'll watch me. Now the second, if I'm walking that same path, checking cameras, they
Yeah.
they won't stick around. But as long as I stay on the four-wheeler in close proximity and leave it running,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to bother them.
Yeah, we run into the same thing for sure, and it's funny because your urban hunters, they like this conversation. I've talked to a couple of them, and they'll tell you, you're playing in the backyard with your kids all the time or whatever, or a family is, and you see these big deer in people's backyards in suburbia. I call them
Hmm.
the suburban nights or the city deer,
Yeah.
and they don't care, and you can just play in your yard, but it's like the moment you step in them woods and that's not normally what you do, now there's something wrong. That's what
Right.
alarms them. They so they're just like us and we're just like
Right.
them, if you will, whereas we're creatures of habit.
Yeah.
And I remember just an old Nickelodeon show, and you may or may not know about it. It was called Pete and Pete, and this is like a stupidest thing to compare it to, but it's funny because it sticks in my head. And they had this stupid character that they paid, and he was like the strongest man ever or something like that, and they paid him to move their neighbor's house. And so they show, a stupid thing like he goes over and grabs it and like goes to like move the house. Well, here he moved it like an inch and a half or like an inch or something like that. And they show like the
Hmm.
guy going up to the door and he tries to stick his key in the door and he misses several times and he's like right beside it. And he goes in the house to put his shoes down or whatever, and he puts his shoes to the side and like they fall off the ledge and he's like scratching his head like what's going on. And he goes in to press the buttons on the remote and he couldn't hit the power button on the television. And it just it's just a comparison that
Just that little, yeah, and that's the same way in the deer woods. Just
yeah
a
it's
slight little bit of difference, and
yes
I preach that. I've got a few family members that hunt with me out there, and
uh-huh
I preach that come hunting season is you've got to have a good approach. You got to pay attention to your wind, because even though I'm out here year round, they know when somebody different's there. They know when somebody's taking the same trail to the same stand day after day after day. And
mm-hmm.
and that's a hard concept to get through to the older generations.
Yeah
They're used to walking up the trail or walking down the tractor path and plopping their butt in the stand and breaking out a cup of coffee. And
yeah
so, you know, but I told them, I said, you guys will shoot year and a half, 2-year-old 8 points every year,
mm-hmm
but you're never going to kill that 5 or 6-year-old
mm-hmm
in those.
yeah
But
no
they're
I
fine, and
right
then the older family members of mine that hunt out there, they're fine killing a nice 2-year-old 8 points.
yeah
Yeah,
right
they're tickled with that.
Yeah, and that's we talk about it on the show all the time. What kind of skin are you putting in this game?
Right.
What kind of blood and effort are you putting in then too? Also, and then also like what are your expectations? Because if you're an individual that's hunting an area that is holding 2.5-year-old deer, maybe a 3-year-old deer, and you want to shoot a 150-inch deer or a deer that weighs 280 pounds, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Yes, you might be there to do that, but that's not logical,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then you talk to them and you're like, if you're going to put the skin in this game, maybe you get some more cameras up here or over here on the public, or you knock on this guy's door where you were driving up the road one day and you seen a larger deer out in the field or whatever, and ask for permission or whatever it is. And then on the flip side, like you were saying, you don't, maybe you don't hang a tree stand, maybe you go in and hang and hunt, and then the next night you go 70 yards from where you were just hanging hunting, and you hang and hunt there because the wind has changed,
Right.
or it's a different time of the day and the thermals are different. It's just there's so much skin to put in there in that game, and you, if you're gonna be good at it, that's how you get good at it. You know what I
It
mean?
is. It is. It's a learning process. I learn more every single year. I learn more and more about deer. I learn about their habits.
Yeah.
I learn, and to me, that's why I have the passion I do for it. They're such an interesting creature, um, and I just absolutely love it. And I admire what those deer are able to do out there year round. I have a particular buck on my property now that he's in year 7, and he's beautiful. He's probably a 150-inch deer this year.
Wow.
I've basically resigned myself to he's unkillable.
Hmm.
And I respect him for that. I just hope that he continues to pass his genes on. But I will get him on camera 2 or 3 times a year, and I'll get him a lot during the summer. But during the seasons, I might get him 2 or 3 times during daylight, and that's typically peak rut. He may make an appearance here and there, but I'm never in the right place at the right time.
Yep.
And we have a particular area of the property that's about 3 acres that is the nastiest, thickest multiflora rose,
Hmm.
grown up old pasture field that we use it as a sanctuary. Nobody goes in there.
Yep.
I might take a walk through there one time in the spring looking for sheds,
Hmm.
but nobody goes in there during hunting season. And
Right.
and he knows that particular buck knows that, and that's where he stays. Now we try to intercept him on the edges, and again during the rut, he might venture out a little bit during daylight. But I have such a respect for that particular deer because I have watched him from a young 4 6 point, and then he blew up into a pretty good 8 point, and then the last 3 years he's been a 10 point, and he's just awesome. He's an awesome animal to chase.
Yeah, these animals have the uttermost respect from me. I've seen these animals, just the shit that they can get through and put
Yeah,
themselves through is so impressive, and they can live anywhere. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
they just can inhabit whatever they want. And that's why, you know, humans want to make houses in the woods and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, well, we have a deer problem." Well, you put your freaking house where they live.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
no, they're here first and foremost. Whenever people were like, "Well, there's a deer problem there," well, they were already here. And then, the ability for them to be hit by cars and live for years, or deer get shot. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
they're getting shot with rifles, like
right.
shots that should probably kill them, and it's just their will to live. They live.
Yeah, I mean, not to get crazy graphic. I mean, I know people don't want to hear the bad side of things, but I made a bad shot on a buck 2 years ago
Hmm.
with a crossbow, and the arrow deflected halfway through, and it entered front of the shoulder,
Hmm.
and it dropped him on the spot. It was a 30-yard shot, and he fell over immediately and was kicking his legs. I thought, oh my God, I've never done that before. As far
Hmm.
as like an instant kill, didn't have to track him or anything. And by the time I set the bow down, and my first text was to my dad, who was hunting on the property with me. I said, man, I just smoked a good one. And by the time I looked back up, that deer was gone, completely out of sight. Couldn't see him, couldn't hear him. And thank God I ended up recovering the deer the next day. But to see how far that deer went with the shot wasn't perfect. It was a bad deflection, but that arrow still entered in the front of his shoulder and went down lengthwise through the body, and that deer still went almost a mile, and I found him the next day. But I couldn't believe it. Like my respect, and I mean,
Hmm.
quite honestly, I was so mad at myself over that shot, and what I put that deer through. I'm like, that deer deserves so much better, but the will to live and the just that thing just kept going and going and going. It was amazing to me.
Yeah, they really are. And like you said, I mean, I can get into a couple graphic stories of deer that I've
Right.
seen, and like you said, yeah, no one really wants to hear about it. But the fact of the matter is that this is the game. You
It
know,
happens. Right.
it's part of it. I've tracked deer for too long sometimes, and I
Yeah.
actually do have a little bit of a gripe with smaller caliber rifles.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest fan of them, to be open and honest. I don't really like. I understand there's guys that kill deer with 243s and 223s and all that, and that's fine. I understand that's cool and all, but I will tell you that I have tracked a lot of gut shot deer and deer that may have been shot in hind quarter, and I
Right.
understand that that's not a good shot. But the fact of the matter is, there are things in the woods and obstacles where they can deflect bullets. And if those deer were hit by heavier calibers, I truly believe that they would have not went far and died.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and in the hands of an experienced, person and in the right setting, if you're
yes.
hunting private ground where the deer are calm, you can get away with shooting with a. I mean, I'll be honest, I've shot deer with a 22-250,
Mm-hmm.
but I choose a very good nozzler partition bullet, and my deer are calm. I'm not shooting them on a run,
Right.
but that's not my first choice. Like if I'm going out, and I've been fortunate enough, I haven't really buck hunted with a gun for a few years now.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm going out the first day with a gun, I'm not carrying my 22-250 or 243.
Right.
I'm gonna have
Right.
something a little heavier.
Yeah, and like I said, I understand it. It's to each their own, and some guys,
Right.
that's an old caliber, so it's used by a lot of people. And
Yep.
yes, it will work, and it will work well. And like you said it perfectly. In the hands of a marksman or an experienced hunter, it's really great.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, situation's got to be right for it.
yes.
If we're going out putting on deer drives, which used to be the way we hunted. We used to put on deer drives.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We're lazy hunters now. We have stands all over, but
Right.
back in the day, if we were putting on deer drives, the old timers wouldn't even let you in there with a small caliber gun.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted something big, brush busting, because if you did get shots, it was going to be in the thick stuff, and 9 times out of 10, the deer were going to be running.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's the times have changed, man. There's still a
Yeah,
lot of people that drive deer, and my family and I are one of them.
yeah.
But it's not like it
I
used to
miss it.
be.
I miss it. I
It's
love those days. It was so exciting.
yes, and there are guys like I've got message from a couple guys. They're like, "Hey, man, I'm not really a big fan of that," and that's fine. We're all entitled to our opinion, and the
Right.
fact of the matter is that they are right for some things. You need to set that up right, and you need to be with people that know what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, it was an art form. Like I said, before we were on the air, we were talking. I grew up in the mid 80s. That's when my hunting started in 84, 85, somewhere in that vicinity.
Hmm.
And that's how we hunted. That's how the old timers hunted. And it was exciting to me. We'd line these drives up, and these drives were done year after year. They were passed down from generations
Yep.
in the same areas.
Yep. That's funny. Yeah, it is awesome though, man. I love the biggest thing that I like about rifle season is I I mean, if I get the gun out, I'm all business if I'm hunting alone. But,
Hmm.
when I'm out there with my family and it's just like, you didn't shoot that deer. It's like the whole group got the deer.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like a big camaraderie thing and it is a lot of fun, man. I
It
love the
is. I
I love
love
the
hearing those
heritage.
first shots of the day and wondering, oh, hey, was that so and so, or was that
Yeah.
so and so?
Yep. That's true.
Yeah.
It is a lot of fun. But I do want to circle back into some more trail cam talk. And
Hmm. Hmm.
you have been lucky enough to use, I don't say lucky enough, but you've put a lot of time in using a lot of different cameras. And
Yeah.
do you want to speak on any? I don't really want to blow anybody in like, oh, this complete shit box. If you want to, that's fine. Um,
I have two brands that I refuse to use.
okay.
I won't name them by name, but they're very popular brands that you'll find in big box stores. I've just had, and I've used them over the past. I've just had no luck with them. They're throwaway cameras, in my opinion. They're not worth your money.
Okay.
Um, but I have been very fortunate to make some great relationships in the camera industry,
Hmm.
and I've had the opportunity to do some product testing. I've also had the opportunity to uh, get pictures that have been used on packaging for a couple bigger companies. Um, so I've got to meet and work with a lot of great people in the camera industry, and it's a small industry. It's a niche.
Hmm.
Um, Browning trail cameras are fantastic. I love my Brownings.
Me too.
Uh, I haven't had any major issues. And let's just say right out the box, you're going to have issues with every single brand of camera. I don't care if it's a $69 Amazon camera or a
Hmm.
$400 Reconyx. Eventually, that camera is going to have an issue
Hmm.
because you're taking a piece of electronics and you're putting it out in the elements. And in my case, I'm out there 24/7, so they're seeing extreme heat, snow, ice, sleet, rainstorms. Um, there's very, very few cameras that have been 100% problem free. It's just that something is going to go wrong with them over the years. So what the key is, in my opinion, is finding those brands that are going to stand behind their product, that are going to be responsive when you have a problem. So you can go on Amazon, you can buy a $59 Chinese camera,
Mm-hmm.
and when something goes wrong, good luck getting any kind of customer support.
Yep.
Now, with some of the companies, and we had mentioned Exodus earlier. Exodus is fantastic. They make a great camera. They have a unbelievable, probably the best warranty in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
They offer a 5-year warranty on their cameras, and they're very, very responsive. So if you have an issue, you get a hold of the guys, and a lot of times you're talking directly to the owner of the company to troubleshoot. And the same said for Browning. They've been great. Moultrie's been really good for me.
Yeah, I will talk highly of Moultrie. I've had 2 bear attacks on the Moultrie cams,
mhm.
and they did not have to do what they did for me. They replaced both those cameras,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
speaks very highly of them.
right.
That's volumes to me. So I do stand behind the Moultrie products. I use the Strike Force Brownings.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They are phenomenal.
Yeah,
They, to say the least, to be honest.
yeah.
Right now I was telling you I do have some of the Bow Creek cameras out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I
Yeah, Bow
also,
Creeks are excellent. Matt is again a Pennsylvania company,
yes.
so I try to promote him as much as possible.
Hmm.
But yeah, Bow Creek is a Pennsylvania company. They're a smaller company. You're not going to see them in the big box stores,
Right.
but they put out an excellent camera. And if anyone, you want to go to my Instagram account and look at some, especially my turkey pictures from earlier in the spring.
Hmm.
Some of my Bow Creek pictures are literally DSLR quality. Like, they use a great image sensor, and they're phenomenal pictures. So Bow Creek's fantastic. Again, if you have an issue with a Bow Creek, which I never really have, but
Yeah.
you're gonna talk to the owner of the company when you have an issue.
Yeah.
If you message Matt, whether it be on Instagram or via email or give him a phone call, you're talking to the owner of the company.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
you're not going to get that with some other bigger cameras, but
Well,
so
that's
yeah, the Browning's been good. The Moultrie's been good. Bow Creeks are excellent. I use a lot of Stealth Cam, especially in the cellular end of things. Stealth Cam, some of the new Stealth cellulars have been really good.
mm.
Tacticam, I use probably 6 or 8 different Tacticam cellulars that are doing really well for me. Um,
Can you speak on anything with the customer service? I just actually had somebody talking to me about their customer service today.
who's that?
The Tacticam.
I haven't had any issues myself, but I've had very few issues with their cameras.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever had to contact them for something that I couldn't fix myself.
Okay.
Now, cell cameras are finicky. They're getting better year after year after year. They get better and better.
Yes, they are.
I don't know if you have any experience when the cell cams first came out. They were a nightmare. I hated them. Hated them. They were expensive.
Yes.
They didn't work very well. They ate batteries like crazy.
Hmm.
But no, I don't think I've had any major issues with the Tacticam other than some firmware issues, and sometimes things are self-inflicted, and
Yes.
I find that a lot in myself. Again, running as many cameras as I do, you should, the average guy or whom you should have dedicated SD cards for each brand of camera.
Oh, you make a good point.
I try to do that, but at some points I mix things up, and I will end up taking a card that may have been used in a Moultrie, and I stick that into a Tacticam or whatever brand it may be, and then boom, I got an issue. Something's not working. It's not sending pics. That's because the card was formatted a little bit different, whether it be in a Moultrie or a Browning or whatever, and it went into a separate camera. So my advice would be, if you're running 5-10 cameras, keep your cards separate or keep them brand specific. But I found a lot of my problems with cell cameras are self-inflicted. Whether it be cards are probably the biggest issue. I would say that a lot of problems that people have with cameras are due to the SD cards. Buy a good quality SD card. Don't buy the cheap junk you find on Amazon or eBay. I prefer SanDisk. I use SanDisk Class 10s.
Yep.
because believe it or not, a good card will make a better picture. The right speeds, without getting too crazy technical, the right speeds are a lot faster. And again, with video, especially if you're running video, get a class 10 card, and you're going to get a better video quality.
Yeah, I stand behind exactly what you say. I stand behind the SanDisk products. I have been a DJ for 16 years. I store everything that I have on SanDisk stuff, and I trust it. Um, Also, with that, yes, the class 10s. So, just to educate you guys real quick, if you don't know, the SD cards come in different classes. A lot of photographers and stuff are going to know this fact, but for those of you that don't, if you are going to run something that's comparable to being quality, you want a class 10 or above. And
Yeah.
you might pay a little bit extra, but it's not much. It's well worth it.
Right. And I've gone down the road. I've bought the cheap, generic unbranded stuff off of Amazon or
Hmm.
eBay. They don't last. I end up throwing them away. And I get so mad because I end up losing valuable information. I collect pictures year round, and I have folders on my computer, and I use a couple different softwares to track deer and particular deer. And
Hmm.
I get so mad when I lose 2 or 3 weeks worth of pictures because of a bad SD card.
Yep. That is actually that's one of the most infuriating things I can think of, to be honest.
Oh, it
Especially
is. It
whenever
is.
you're putting some miles on and you go and hang something like that, and you need that intel, and then that intel ain't there. Yes,
Right.
that is
Right.
infuriating. But so we did get to cover a little bit of the SD cards and how that they should be formatted for the camera they go to. One of my buddies, what he does is he just gets little stickers, and they just uses letters. So if it's a
Yeah.
stealth cam, like he'll write ST. So just take
Yes.
two small stickers and put it on there and have ST. In case he
Right.
had a I don't want to say God forbid spy point or anything of that
I
quality.
wasn't going to mention them, but
Um, I just yeah I'm we don't even need to bring it up, but so
there's a good reason I didn't mention them in my favorites. But
yeah.
we'll leave it at that.
Right. So, like I said, we don't want to dog anybody. I've had my fair share of problems, and
Yeah.
that thing has a lot of dust on it. But, so he just uses the letters and the letter system. So his Tacticams, like he'll put a T on. If
Hmm.
it's a Browning, maybe BR. If he has Bow Creeks or whatever,
Hmm.
BO or
Hmm.
Moultrie's M. And that works really well. That way you're not formatting the cards. Now I will
Right.
tell you, and you may not like these cameras. Maybe you've run into problems and had problems with them. But me being a public land guy, and I do have private land and everything, but the cameras that I run on public land, for the most part, I have probably about 15 of those Tosco cameras from Walmart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Excellent camera.
yeah, I'll be honest, man.
They are.
I
They
don't.
are.
I tell guys like buy them. There was
Yeah.
one time I went into Walmart and they were on sale. They were clearanced, so they're already cheap as it is. They were
Yep.
$29.99 and they were clearanced for $19 a piece.
Yeah.
And
Buy 10 of them. Yeah.
I bought. They had 10 left. They're all here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
No,
only thing.
a lot of guys ask me, and that's probably the question I get asked most via Instagram,
Hmm.
messages is, what's the best camera what's the best bang for the buck?
Mm,
Can you find a quality camera under $50? And that's probably my number one recommendation
mm,
because they're good. And if you're putting them on public land and some idiot comes and steals them or shoots them or whatever, you're not out much.
mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. You. I think they're great for what they are. Like they're
Hmm.
not. I'm
Hmm.
not going to take pictures on them and send it to you and say, "Hey, can you put this on the Trailcamology
Right.
page?"
Right.
But yes, for what they are, they work good. But that is a great question. You just said under $50. So, can you touch on kind of like the price range, and then if you don't mind, I mean, you don't have to throw names out. You can do whatever you're comfortable with, but
Hmm. Hmm.
let's if we could we do a $50 to $100 range camera, one with a 150, and then let's do 150 and above if you don't mind.
Okay. Um, a camera that I am super, super high on that uh, originally they came out and they were $224 cameras is a Bog.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've seen the tripods. They're big on, the Bog tripods. Well, Bog jumped into the camera game a few years ago, and they brought two cameras out. One was called a clandestine. The other one was called a bog moon, or a blood moon. They were over $200 cameras. Right now, I don't think it's a secret anymore. Bog is getting out of the trail camera business. So they're focusing on some different areas. So if you get online and you do a little searching, you can find those cameras. I bought 12 of them, and hopefully my wife doesn't listen to this, but I bought 12 of them not long ago off of Natchez.
Yep, Natchez
Reloading
Trail.
Supply.
Yep.
I got them for $39 each.
Jeez.
They were on clearance. So I bought as many as I could possibly afford at that point in time. Excellent camera. So if you're out there, you're listening, and you want a top of the line camera for under $100, Google Bog clandestine Bog blood moon, and if you do a little searching, you can find them online.
Nice.
That said, they're not going to last forever. That's why I bought them when I did. There is an Amazon camera that I like. It's a Guard Pro A3S. It's $50 to $60. Excellent video, excellent picture quality. Longevity's been good for me. You know, the drawback with that is if you do have an issue, good luck.
Right.
But for a $50 to $100 camera, that's probably one of the best ones.
For that price, you just eat it and move on.
Yeah, exactly. So the next step up would be, in $100, $100 to $150, and that's probably the sweet spot nowadays.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cameras in that range, and the crazy thing is, cellular cameras they've become cheaper than traditional cameras.
Yeah,
so you can get a lot of cell cameras in the $99 to $120, $150 range. Bushnell puts out a really nice cellular core that I have several of those running right now that you can find those for $99. Actually, I just saw them at Midway for, I think, $69 for cell cam. Now, with the cell cam, you have the additional cost of a subscription that you're going to have to pay a monthly fee for, and those range anywhere from $5 to $15 depending on the number of pics you expect to transmit.
Per camera, I'd like to say.
Per camera, yes. Yeah, per plan. So yeah, there's a lot of cameras in that range. You had mentioned the Browning Strike Force, that would fall into that category. The Bushnells, stealth cams, the depending on whether you seems like everybody's moving towards the cell cams. So Stealth puts out a Deceptor, they put out a Fusion X this year, and those cameras are both under 150 if I'm not mistaken. Excellent quality. Stealth Cam has a very nice app which works well. Yeah, and then we talked to Tacticams. I think majority of their cameras are going to be under 150 right now. But yeah, there's a ton of options in that range. A lot of the Brownings, unless you get into the higher end, they're all going to be 150 or below, or right around the 150 mark.
Yeah. And
then you get up above that, and that's when you start getting into some, the better quality pictures. If you're looking for true, again, I hate to keep saying it, but postcard quality.
Right.
And you can get into, some of the Bow Creek BC.38. And don't quote me. I'm not 100% sure where the price point is on that now. So if Matt's listening, I apologize, but I want to say it's a 150 in that area. Excellent quality camera, incredible pics. Probably the top 2 or 3 camera I've ever used as far as pic quality. And then obviously you could go crazy, and if cash is no issue and you want to get into Reconyx makes a fantastic camera. It's going to last you forever. But they're extremely expensive.
Yes.
You get into $300, $400, sometimes $500 for a Reconyx camera. The benefit to that is Reconyx are made in the USA.
I didn't know
bulletproof. That. Yeah. They are able to say they're made in the USA. I don't know the complete breakdown of their cameras, but yeah, they're made in the USA. I believe Wisconsin. I haven't had a lot of experience with them just because, quite frankly, they're too expensive for me.
Yeah, right.
But there's guys out there that swear by them.
If Reconyx is listening, we need to get them to send you some cameras so that you can.
I've tried. They haven't taken the bait just yet. But
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
but to be honest with you, you could spend $500 on a Reconyx and you're going to get a camera that's going to last you forever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're one of the very few companies that if you do have an issue and the camera quits working, they have a repair facility. You can send it back and they'll refurb it and send it back to you. Or if it's completely beyond refurbishing, they'll offer you a new one,
Mm-hmm.
or they'll offer you a new one at a reduced cost. So they are a great company. I'm not down on them. They're just a little outside my price range with
Yeah.
the amount of cameras I'm running. There's no way I can afford $300, $400, $500 Reconyx.
Yeah. Well, they have their own niche. When we were
They
talking
do.
about that earlier, everybody seems like is in their own niche. You have your box store cameras, if you will, and we talked about some of them, and their packaging is going to be pictures maybe that you've even given them or
Right.
made a deal with them, or you have your companies like Exodus or like Bow Creek that are consumer direct, and
Yes.
they know what you're after as far as you want to get good pictures and you don't want to break the bank because you want to have multiple cameras,
Right.
and they
Right.
fit that niche really well. You would get that box in the mail, and sure, it doesn't have all the famous hunters with dead deer on it, and famous turkey hunters with dead turkeys and stuff on the
Right.
pictures and all that. But when you pull it out of the box, you're like, okay, this is what I need, and this is what's going to work for me.
Right. And I want
Um,
to say that's probably why you get a better quality camera with Bow Creek is because they are consumer direct.
right.
You're paying instead of paying markup, you're paying for the quality components in the camera.
Yeah.
And like I've said, their Bow Creek's image sensor is phenomenal, which in turn leads to picture quality,
Do
video
you
quality.
do you have any because I have experience with this company and I have nothing short of great pictures coming out of this stuff, but I have a couple cameras here from Covert,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I don't know if you've ever used or had any of them. Um, is it I mean, is it a good have you used them, or is it bad, good?
Um, yeah, I used Covert almost exclusively years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Covert used to be a family-owned company from
Okay.
Kentucky. And they were very, very good quality. Um, and one of the, us camera nerds, one of the holy grails of cameras used to be what was called a Covert A. Oh gosh, I don't know if it was A40, D40. I'm drawing a blank on that, but they were one of the first couple models of Coverts that came out.
Mm-hmm.
And they were phenomenal, phenomenal cameras. And then as Covert got bigger, they ended up selling out to, I believe, Faradyne Outdoors Group bought Covert.
Okay.
So I don't know if the it used to be the Doris family down in Kentucky ran Covert. I don't know if the Doris family's still involved. Good people. I have nothing bad to say about them.
Mm-hmm.
But quite frankly, the quality of the cameras went downhill for a few years. I had a lot of trouble with moisture.
Mm.
They had an issue, and I think it was, insider info. On my part, I think it was an issue with O-rings that they were sourcing. And these O-rings were breaking down over a few years, and it was, they weren't sealing the cameras. So when you get a rainstorm or this time of year when it's very hot and humid out, you would get moisture inside the lens. And, obviously,
They're kaput.
picture quality was horrible.
Yeah.
So that said, I quit using them after a few years, and I had my original fleet that did very well for me for several years. When those started dying off, I didn't re-up because they did have the issue with the moisture.
Hmm.
So I don't know what direction they've gone since Faradyne took them over. I honestly, I haven't used any of their cameras for the last few years. Not that I'd be open to taking a look at them again, but
Mm-hmm.
you say you have some that put out some really good images.
So the ones that I have they are made by Covert, but they were outsourced, and I got them for a really good price, thinking, maybe these will be all right. And I bought four
Hmm.
of them. I have them. They are the Browning Sense, or I'm sorry, not Browning. They're Mossy Oak Gamekeeper.
Yeah, yeah,
But they're made. They're the exact as the Blackhawk, I believe, is what it was from Covert.
okay, yeah,
Um, but they're the Census 1080s, what they are. Now, I've
okay.
seen reviews on the Census 720, and they're not good. Now, I will tell you that this Census 1080 that I have has done nothing but good things. There's only one complaint that I have, and actually, when we get off, I'm going to send you a video that I got on this, and
Uh-huh.
you might even want to use it. It's really really good. Um, but it has a different format for videos. So if you look at the videos, you have to run a PRT. It
Okay.
it is not MP3, or I mean MP4 or WMA or WV.
Right.
It's yeah. So PRT is that's an odd format.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't
Um,
know that I've ever seen that.
so I had to use, if I use my phone or if I use my iPad out in the field, I have the program VLC, and you can just drag and drop it in there, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. Like, you can't just
Right.
open your computer or your phone or whatever and just scroll through it and watch the videos. You kind of have to like make a playlist, drag it all to a playlist, and then like click through them. So
Okay.
it's not, I mean, that's kind of inconvenient for a lot of people, but the quality that I get from it is, I mean, it's second to none, to be honest.
Yeah.
And the only thing I've even seen comparable yet is, like you said, I have one of the newer Bow Creeks here, and the picture quality is really, really, really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to see if you wanted to touch on that. Other than that, yeah, I have all the other cameras that you've talked about, or if I've had
Hmm.
experience with almost all of
Hmm.
them. And I actually have a friend who is a real big fan of the bog cameras, and that's funny you brought that up, because I
Yeah.
have, I've looked all over your page and looked at all the pictures that are on there, and most of those really good pictures are from those bog cameras.
They are. They are. I was actually just talking to one of Bog's product development guys today.
Hmm.
Actually, we were trading some messages back and forth, and I said, "Man, it's really a shame that Bog got out of the camera market, because they put out some really really good stuff, and it unfortunately became they just as a company decided to go a different direction.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
but yeah, I'm glad I was able to snag some of those while I was.
Hmm.
And they're a unique camera. They have a removable viewer, which is
I've
kind of cool.
I
You're
have
able to
seen that.
take it out and view in the field.
Yep, that is cool. Yep, that's different. And that's really similar to the covert one that I was telling you about, that gamekeeper. It actually pulls out of the
Okay.
casing. So like the actual camera pulls out of the inside, and then you're just left with the shell, like the hinge. Um, and you pull that out, and the batteries go in the back. But if you want, you
Hmm.
can hold that in your hand, like you said, and there's a viewer on it. Now, it's not as
Okay.
cool as like the bog. I've seen that one. That one's really cool. Um,
Yeah, you can actually pull the Bog out, and
you
you
could,
can you can put anything in it. You
right.
can carry it around all your cameras.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah.
That is impressive,
Yeah.
man. Now I do want to go down the road, Eric, of a couple other questions here for you. I
Hmm.
want to see what your what your ethics are on the camera use. I- it's kind of a slippery slope, but
It is. It is.
some guys, and I just want to give you an example. Some guys I talk to think that cameras are too big of an advantage. Some guys, they love them. Um, some guys just love to get pictures on cameras, and I always tell people
Right.
that there's two ways to run these cameras, right? We have them as a tool, or we have them as a passion, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I do both. I have a one that I put in a crossing that I just get pictures of a whole bunch of different animals on this ravine. It's just a
Hmm.
pinch, and I just like to go check it. I really don't care
Yeah.
what deer I get on pictures there. I just want to see what's going on there.
Right.
And that's just exciting, because let's face it, I feel like it's Christmas morning when I go pull these cards sometimes. I'm
Sure.
so giddy, I'm skipping through the woods and singing and
Yeah.
humming, and I'm all excited. So then you have the other side, which is the cell phone cameras.
Right.
That's where I have seen kind of a pushback a little bit.
And
Uh,
yeah, exactly.
and I have also, seen that there are some states that are there's legislation against using some of these cameras. So I just want to kind of pick your brain and see how you
Right.
feel about it.
Yeah, it is a slippery slope. And it's all, I guess, it all comes down to personal preference.
Hmm.
I'm with you. I'm of the mindset. I like putting cameras out, and I like seeing what's going on out in the woods, and I like challenging myself to catch different creatures. I tried so hard this past winter to get a weasel, and I ended up getting a couple weasel pictures and videos, but it's just something that you don't see weasels. I mean, you've been in the woods how many years? How many weasels have you ever seen?
Mm,
They're out there.
yeah.
The same things with mink, and just recently I was super pumped. I got my first Pennsylvania fisher on camera.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So, yeah, I'm always out there. But I do see the ethics side of it, and especially with the cell cams. And I'll tell you right now, the big thing with the new cell cams and the stuff that's coming out this year are live view cameras,
Hmm.
where you can pop an app up on your phone and you can tap into your camera wherever it may be on your property, and you can pull up a live view.
Hmm.
Uh, From a hunting standpoint, I don't quite agree with that. I'm not going to condone it. If it's legal in your state and you're following the laws, hey, do your thing. I'm not going to condone it, or I'm not going to condemn it, I should say.
Right.
Um, I do see the ethical issue with that. If let's just use turkey season for an example. If I've got a blind set up on a food plot on the top of my property, and I have a live view camera, what's to stop me from pulling that live view up at any time during the morning and saying, "Oh, there's where they're at. We should go here," or "Nope, they're not out there right now. Let's wait." Or you know what I mean? And then it's the same can be said for deer season.
Yep.
If you pull a live view up from a food plot on the side of your property and you say, "Oh, there's the buck I'm after. He's out feeding," I do see an ethical issue with that. Yeah.
Yep. I will be on your side on that one. I'm not a fan of that. Like you said, to each is their own, and if it's legal, by all means, have at it.
Right.
And that kind of steers me into the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is, do you think that trail cameras take away from people learning any type of, or maybe learning more about having good woodsmanship?
Woodsmanship. Yeah. Yeah, I would say, especially, and I hate to sound like an old guy, but I grew up in the woods. I grew up in the country, before cell phones, before trail cameras, before all this. So I spent a lot of time out in the woods, and I think that's taught me a lot. Today's kids, and again, at the risk of sounding old, today's kids and the younger generation, they're all about instant gratification.
Yeah.
If they can't find it on their phone,
Right.
in 30 seconds, they're not interested anymore. The attention span is so, and I've even found that with my own kids when they were growing up and I was teaching them to hunt. It wasn't enough for them to just go out and sit in a stand or a blind and enjoy nature. They had to have a distraction. I had to have a distraction to keep them in the stand for more than an hour, and that be tablets and cell phones and iPads and whatever. So yeah, I do think that, putting the cameras out has for some, it may take away from actually learning. But at the same in the same sentence, it can actually teach you a lot. If you really pay attention to the data that your cameras collect, you can learn a lot about deer. You can learn a lot about moon phases and barometric pressure and wind directions and temperature fluctuations and, when the deer are moving and but I don't know that a lot of people really look at that information. A lot of guys, they're just flipping through and boom, there's a good buck,
Yep.
So I think it's a little bit of both. Yeah, it's taken away a little bit of woodsmanship, but at the same time, if you're a student of the game and you pay attention to the data that they provide, you can learn a lot from them as well.
And I attest to everything you said there, because moving forward throughout this, I don't say this game, but just life, as technology advances, we also have to find where it benefits us more than just the instant gratification. Or
Right.
I know at work everything used to be on paper, and that was
Yeah.
that was the thing. Now I remember they transitioned stuff, and we get some protection and stuff, on working on the rail on the phones now, and it's a mobile app that we use.
hmm
And when they first did that, like, there was a heavy push. Like, our older guys were like, "No, why would you do that? Like, there's so much bad that can happen with that." And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but you guys are just looking at the bad. You're not looking at the good that it can do.
Right.
And now it's just the norm. Without it, they're like, "Oh, well, you got to do it the hard way," right?
Right. Right. Right.
But yes, I think you're right. I think the only thing that it hinders people from is this, and I've seen this too many times. It's basically, so you want to learn how to hunt. So maybe you weren't raised in a family, or you didn't have a mentor. So you get on YouTube University, just like everyone else does to do anything anymore, and you type in how to be a deer hunter or whatever it is. And the first thing you're probably going to see is, well, here's the cookie cutter answer. To learn how to hunt deer, the first thing you're going to do is go buy a trail camera and go put it on this scrape or a bait
Right.
pal, and if you're in one of them states where you can bait or whatever, and then you're going to learn what deer are there, and that's the first and foremost thing you got to do. But I think that takes away from guys that have good woodsmanship who can just go in blind. All right, because
Right.
that exhilarates me. Yeah, I love the cameras and I enjoy the whole process, but sometimes when we go out of state or something and we just go to a new area and we start hunting and I find some hot sign and it's good
Hmm.
sign, I'm excited. You
Yeah,
don't know, you know what I mean? And I'm an opportunistic hunter, so whenever that 110-inch deer that I need to fill a tag on comes up, I'm flinging.
right.
And
Yeah,
I'm more than happy to shoot that deer.
yeah.
Whereas sometimes I think it could hinder knowing that I have pictures of multiple other big deer in that area.
That's yes,
It's
my
that
situation exactly.
Yes,
I
it's a double-edged sword.
I've passed up a lot of good bucks because I know what else is on there because of my cameras. I'm like, oh, this 110, 120 inch 8 point, no, would be and I'm not going to say I haven't shot them. Gosh, last year I shot probably 100 inch 8 point, and I was tickled to death with him because it was just such a cool hunt.
Yep,
The
yep.
year before I probably shot a 100 and yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm not a big score guy. I know a lot of the younger guys are into the inches, and
Yes.
if I see a nice 8 point and he's wider than his ears and he puts on a show, and 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I used a decoy for the very first time in archery hunting. And I had a buck decoy out, and I had the coolest hunt ever, man. This 100 inch 8 point was just madder than can be. He saw this decoy on the edge of a field, and he came in there, and I've never seen a deer ears back, hair standing up like a dog, just pissed, ready to fight.
Hmm.
And that was just such a cool hunt. Whether that was a 100 inch 8 point or a 150 inch 10 point, that deer was getting shot because it was just such a cool, memorable hunt for me. And I'll probably never forget that particular hunt.
Yeah, I have had way more fun hunting deer than I have hunting giant deer.
Yeah,
Now, don't
yeah,
get me wrong. I have had my share of big deer, been able to kill some, and unfortunately wounded some, or have totally whiffed.
right.
But the fact of the matter is, I have just as much fun shooting any buck or doe that I do killing giants. And
Yeah,
that's the truth. I know some people might say, "Oh, no, that's a lie." No, I really do. I just enjoy it. I enjoy the whole process, and I really after the deer's dead, that's when the fun really really starts for me because I love the whole process. I love butchering them, skinning them.
yep,
I love getting my hands on them, and then I love the process after that, packaging my own meat and
right.
setting everything up the way I'm gonna want it set up, and then the part that I'm really starting to enjoy more than anything is to get to cook them then
Yeah.
and trying all these different things that I've been learning and really understanding some of the processes of really how to make something taste really wonderful.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then when you're done and you're sitting there with a full belly, it's like, man, I can't wait to do this again. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
for me, it's like deer season can't come quick enough. But
Yep.
we live in a wonderful state for deer hunters, and I don't want to say just deer hunters, just hunting and fishing or outdoor activities. Our park systems is wonderful. The
Right.
DCNR does a great job here in Pennsylvania. Um, is there some things that you think that we do well here in Pennsylvania? And then on the flip side, I'd like for you to talk about the things that you think that we may be able to take a look at and maybe change heading forward.
Yeah, I think the deer management plan is actually done very well here. Again, going back, I grew up in the heyday of deer hunting where everybody went to quote unquote the mountains to hunt deer. So we live, and at that point we lived in the very southwest corner. So um, we would always head to the big woods, what we called in Clarion and Forest and Warren County, Elk County, Jefferson County, all up there. My family all had camps in those areas, and that's where we went to deer hunt. And when I first started hunting, there was deer everywhere. And now the quality of deer at that point, you quality wasn't stressed like it is now. Back then, if you shot a spike, 4 point, 3 point, whatever it may be on a drive, what I call mountain deer,
Mm-hmm.
man, you were just as happy as if you shot a big 8 point because they were tough. But there was a lot of deer. It was nothing to see 40, 50, 60 deer in a day. Then that started shifting. Late 80s, early 90s, the number of deer and doe license allocations up north got higher, so the number of deer got lower. And a lot of it was due to deforestation issues.
Mm-hmm.
There was too many deer up north, so they started killing them off. A lot of the old timers didn't like that. They weren't seeing 40 and 50 deer every day.
Yep.
So there was a lot of grumbling went on. We in turn, we adapted to the process. We said, okay, we're not going to go to the mountains anymore to hunt. We're going to stay home because wow, we're starting to see some good deer down around, the Washington, Greene, Fayette counties, Allegheny counties.
Mm-hmm.
So then we started hunting back home. But so I think they did a good job navigating that. I know there was a lot of unhappy people, and to this day, you're always going to have your unhappy people. There's still people to this day right now that are unhappy about antler restrictions. You and I talked a little bit about that. When antler restrictions first hit Pennsylvania, gosh, there was some very, very irate
Oh my
people, and
goodness.
I had family members, my dad and my uncles. They didn't care about antler size. If they shot a good 8 point back in the day, and I say a good 8 point being a 2 year old with a 14, 16 inch spread, that deer went on the wall,
Yeah.
and they were happy. But they were just as happy to shoot the small bucks because it was about filling freezers and camaraderie and tradition
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. But when the antler restrictions, and I don't remember exactly what year Pennsylvania introduced the antler restrictions, um, there was a lot of people who were angry about that. And I think it's been fantastic because Pennsylvania has the ability to put out some very good quality deer. If you look at some of the deer that have been killed over the past dozen years, they're right up there with Ohio. Maybe not the same numbers that you're going to see in Ohio or Kentucky or Iowa or the Midwest, but we have the genetics to put out some really good deer. So antler restrictions haven't bothered me. Now, one of the things I would like to see Pennsylvania reconsider would be antler restrictions for senior hunters. I feel like once you're 65, you put your time in, take the antler restrictions away.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's be honest. I mean, things move a little faster, and you get to those age, maybe your eyesight isn't as good, or maybe your reaction time isn't as good, and it gets hard to count points.
Yep.
My dad, in his later years, he was still fortunate enough to shoot some nice bucks, but he also, I don't want to say missed per se, but he missed out on some opportunities because he was unable to count points. And it's easy to say if you're sitting in a box blind overlooking a bean field with maybe 6 or 8 deer out there, you see on some of these hunting shows with a spotting scope or a good pair of binoculars.
Right.
That's not always the way it happens, especially in Pennsylvania. A lot of times, maybe you're getting deer running across the pipeline, or you're getting deer coming through an oak flat, and you don't have time to scope them or binoculars to count points. So I would like to see that go away because I think some of the older guys have given it up because they don't have the ability or the want to count points. They would be tickled. I know some of my older relatives, they would be tickled to shoot a 4 point on opening morning, just to get out there. I would like to see them reconsider that for senior hunters.
I have no objections to that also. I have had this conversation with multiple people about that, and yes, I believe that that should be a thing. And yeah, there's lots of deer, and
Yeah.
it's funny whenever I get into conversations with people that just think for some reason we're just gonna wipe the deer herd out.
No,
It's
the deer are very, very resilient.
Mhm.
Quick story. Gosh, it's probably been 10 years now. We got hit with CW, or not CWD, but EHD,
Yeah,
down here in the southwest corner.
yeah,
And I'll tell you what, it scared me because it wiped the deer out. Like, you couldn't ride around in the summertime with your windows down in your vehicle because the smell was so bad. There were so many dead deer that I was I was worried. I thought, man, they're never going to recover from this. But within 2 years, they're back. They were back and better than ever.
yep. Well, it's just a testament to what we were talking about before when we come on that these deer they can just live anywhere. And
Yeah.
actually, an older gentleman told me a story about the deer population totally decimated in Pennsylvania. That there was no deer, and I forget
Hmm.
what year he said that this was. There was no deer in Pennsylvania, and the game
Hmm.
commission actually brought the deer in. They
Right.
brought deer back in, and I think that was the Game Lands thing. It was like
Yeah.
Game Lands 1 or whatever the first Game Lands was. And it might not be 1, but I can't remember the name of
Right.
it. I think it is somewhere down around you. It's either somewhere down there or it's somewhere up around the Allegheny National Forest area, and I can't remember exactly. But also, I did want to touch on it was 2002. I remember when the antler restrictions, because I
Okay.
was 12 years old, which
Oh.
if you remember, was the um, that was the right. That was the
Oh yeah, yeah,
your
yeah,
birthright was 12 years old to be able to go out and whack one.
yep,
You got to sit in a stand and be part of 3 day doe. I remember three
yeah,
day doe. Um,
yep,
and I also remember the 2 week open season. I remember that pissed a lot of people off too.
yeah,
The older guys did not like that. And, my father and all my uncles and all that was not a popular thing. The antler restrictions were most definitely not a popular thing, which is funny because Dr. Alt can laugh himself to wherever. I think he lives in California or something like that now, or somewhere out
hmm
that way. And he really set the precedence for us moving forward as being one of the go-to states for out-of-state hunters to come and kill
yeah, yeah.
some really
They've
nice
created a
whitetails.
model.
And yeah, and our residents are killing very nice whitetails too. And yeah,
Yeah, I think our game commission does a very good job. You look at what they've done with the deer, and it wasn't an easy sell because of the tradition and because of the heritage in this state. But you also look at what they've done with our black bear population.
oh
The,
my
the
goodness, yeah.
black bear is phenomenal hunting, and if you don't know about Pennsylvania black bear hunting, do a little Google search, and Pennsylvania kills some of the biggest bears in the continent in
Mhm.
North America.
Mhm.
We may not have the numbers that Canada or some of the Western states or even some of the southern states, but our quality of bears in Pennsylvania is phenomenal. We kill 700-800 pounders year in and year out. And then you look at what they've done with turkeys. When I was a kid growing up on a farm, I can remember, and this is again probably mid to late '80s, telling my dad I saw a turkey on the farm, and he called me everything but a liar. He said, "There ain't no turkeys down here." Well, that very first year we saw seven. We ended up seeing them later in the winter, and it was like a community event that, oh my gosh, we saw turkeys.
Yeah.
Well, then that next year, those seven turned into 13, and pretty soon that 13 turned into 30, and then they split. And you look at now, if you look at the harvest data, Southwest Pennsylvania is top of the state in turkey
Yep.
population.
Yep.
But I saw that firsthand from the fact that we had zero turkeys to where we're at now, and it's just hasn't been all that long. I mean, it's over the course of the past 20, 25, 30 years. It's been a crazy story.
Yeah, I can attest to things coming into Pennsylvania. Seeing bobcats. I can
Yeah,
remember there was and I think I've told this story on the show, but there was a picture at the local sportsman's that was like a huge deal. I remember people coming from all over to see this picture that was taken in the woods of this bobcat. And
yeah,
my dad and I seen a bobcat in the woods during the 3 day doe season, and that was a huge deal. We told everybody, everybody call you everything but a liar. And then I can
right,
also remember my pap shooting a coyote and it being a ginormous deal, and people from all over coming to see it.
right.
Um, and now
Yeah,
look, I
now the
mean,
coyotes and bobcats are behind every tree, it seems like.
yeah, there's a good bit of them out there. Yes, there is. Um, so But Eric, I don't have much more for you. I could pick your brain all day with this stuff, man. But really, what I want is for people to be able to reach out to you and kind of get
Sure.
into a little bit more depth with some detailed questions that they may
hmm
have. And so I just want you to touch on where they can get a hold of you and kind of where they can follow what you got going on.
I do primarily everything on Instagram right now. So at Trailcamology on Instagram. Please feel free to send me a message there. We can talk. I've also started a YouTube channel by the same name, Trailcamology. Again, YouTube's a little tougher to build, so it's
Hmm.
still kind of in its infancy. But I'm working on getting some videos and some setup and some review type videos over there on YouTube. But yeah, I welcome any questions. I'm an open book. I don't. I'm not professionally affiliated with any one brand camera. I
Hmm.
don't pro staff for any particular brands.
Yep.
I have relationships with a lot of brands, but those relationships they're very open, and I will give you unbiased information and reviews on a camera. If the
Hmm.
camera sucks, I'm going to tell you it sucks. I may not blast a company publicly, but because I'm not paid or obligated to say good things about any particular brand, I'm going to give you the most unbiased. And that's not always true in the outdoor industry today. A lot of people are going to promote um, whatever brand's paying them to promote them. Whether that particular brand is good or not, they're gonna tell you it's good because that's what you're paid to do.
Yep. Yep. No doubt about that. And for now, at least I can say on my end, I'll give you an unbiased opinion. And I'll always give my unbiased opinion, but I am not affiliated with anybody either. So,
Right.
we're free to talk however we want. So,
Yes, sir. Yes,
that's
sir.
that's the freedom of this game. And Eric, I want to thank you so much for coming on, man. And I'm excited to see, how this is going to work out for you. And I want to watch your YouTube channel grow, because right before we come on, I was watching some videos, and
Okay.
I can't get enough of watching deer, man. I could just go in the woods and watch deer, and I love watching other wildlife too. My friends always tell me, they're like, "Oh, you're so whitetail snobby. Like that's all you want to talk about. That's all you want to do." And I'm like, "Well, this is just me. This is what I
That's who
am."
you are. Yeah, that's
And
who you are.
you hate it or love it. Now, my one buddy says once he gets me out west, he said he's going to change my game, but we'll see. We'll see about that. So he said he's
Well,
got
I
the
appreciate it, man. I
yeah.
really appreciate being on anytime. Like I said, anytime you got some questions or we can do this again. We could go down so many roads. One thing I really didn't touch on is batteries. Batteries are crazy right now. I'm sure anybody that's running a lot of cameras knows the cost of batteries and the scarcity.
Oh my goodness.
But we could do an entire show on batteries and how I combat the battery issues nowadays.
Yeah.
With 100 cameras out, you can imagine the cost of my batteries.
Well, what we could probably set up, Eric, is I can do a little like a short thing with you or something like that, and then
Okay.
we could post that up and maybe give some people some value with that. And like I said, with the experience that you have with the trail cameras, goodness gracious, I honestly don't know anybody who has as much experience with the trail cameras as you do. Because yes,
It's an addiction.
yeah, well, there's some people that okay, you have your own brand, and you've got skin in the game and all that, but you haven't used every other brand. And somebody like you has a lot of valuable information for people to look out for. So don't be surprised after this episode drops, and you really probably start getting some messages for some people asking some questions. So
Good deal. I appreciate that.
yeah, thank you so much, brother. I really hope that the deer season is really good to you. And
Yeah, it's shaping up nice. I got a few nice ones. They're looking good.
good. I'll be happy to follow your journey, and hopefully we can check in with you here soon.
Sounds good, Marcus. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
You have finished another episode of the Keystone Chronicles podcast. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank Eric so much for coming on here. Lots of knowledge dropped in that one, and I bet you that you're going to play certain parts of that back to hear some of the cameras that he talked about. Guys, like I said at the beginning of this, feel free to reach out to him. I had a great conversation with him off air. He's a great dude. Thank you so much, Eric, for coming through. Keep doing what you're doing, blessing us with all the knowledge that you have. Also, guys, I need you to rate, comment, subscribe. Next week, I got something big coming up for you. Make sure you check in. There'll be a video with it. Thank you so much for the support. Here we go.